Okay. Yeah. I'm ready. I'm ready to take the dive.
Yummy like a gummy bear.
Hey everybody. Welcome to Game Mess Mornings with me, Jeff Grubb, your host from giantbomb.com. Thank you for tuning in. In this episode, we're going to be talking about Kojima's next game and is Marathon leading Bungie into a brick wall. It's going to be a good one because we have Jan Ochoa on the show, which is brought to you by, is it still brought to you by Kind of Funny? I have that written here from last week. Still brought to you by Kind of Funny. Why the hell not? But first,
Sure.
Jan Ochoa, how are you doing?
That's right. Tim, Greg, back up the bag.
Yeah, once again, if I just keep saying it, they have to keep paying us. I'm pretty sure that's how commerce works. I'm a business owner.
They have really nice ice at the Kind of Funny office.
See, that's how you know they take care of their people. If they care about the ice machine, they care about everything else.
Yeah.
I'm glad. I always like it when other people know that there's such a thing as the good ice. I like that makes me happy that you know that, Jan, because I feel that very much as well. I'm always on the search for better ice. But right now, I like the cylinders with the hole in it. That's some good ice right now for me right now.
The only ice the Giant Bomb supports is the kind that makes your drinks cooler and colder. All right, folks?
Yes,
Don't get it
right.
twisted, all right?
Yes. If you happen to hear any ads like that on any of our podcasts, please let us know.
Please let us know. And yeah, Grub, like sometimes you don't want like the freezer taste or the fridge taste, and that'll just like ruin your day.
Yeah. What is with that fridge taste? I don't.
Blech.
I got the Brita filter in there, and that's working right now. But I put that in the fridge I have down here, which doesn't have a lot of food in it. It's just other drinks, so mostly avoids the fridge taste. But yeah. All right, Jan. Hey, week 2. We're on this thing. I'm feeling pretty good, although, boy, it's there's still a huge mess behind the scenes of like figuring out how everything pieces together. And Summer Game Fest is just a couple of days away, really, if you think about it. We're still trying to make a bunch of stuff happen. I think we can do it because it's us, but I also think I'll have several more white hairs here within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I was already getting white hairs due to other circumstances, but now it's like recombined efforts with work. I think I can file for unemployment, Gruff.
I think we can. Yeah, I think I can too, actually. I should do that here pretty soon. Don't want to let something like that slip by. All right, you know what, though? Let's get into this show and let's explain ourselves. This is Giant Bomb, a small team of video game doofuses who rely on your support so that we can make cool stuff. If you want to help, go to giantbomb.com/join. That gets you ad-free shows and some other extras. Really, the most important thing, though, there is it's the best way to ensure we can keep doing what we want to do. We have lots of ideas. We have lots of things we want to do. A handful of stuff that would be premium only, but that's going to be here and there. For the most part, we just want to do cool things, follow through on our ideas, and that's going to be possible with your support. I've been told by the people in the back that PayPal is getting fixed, getting updated. They're working on it. So if you signed up, if you went to giantbomb.com/join and you chose the PayPal option, it probably said something like Fandom. Well, we've updated that. So now all that money just goes directly to us. Don't worry about if it went to Fandom. We've got it worked out with them. It's all good. But if you never got processed in that like 7-day free trial, there might be some issues. The team is working on that. They might be sending you an email with some instructions on how to fix that up or whatever. But yes, the team is trying to get it going right now. Once again, though, giantbomb.com/join if you want to help us out. Here on this show, most weekdays, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS feed on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. All right, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with Hideo Kojima reveals his next espionage game, Physint, is 5 to 6 years away. I was going to say 56 years away. Might as well be.
Might as well.
Yeah, this is from Jordan Midler over at VGC. Hideo Kojima has said that one of his next games, Physint, won't be released for 5 or 6 years. Kojima recently spoke to French magazine Le Film Français, during which he was asked about the adaptation of the Death Stranding film, which is currently in production at A24, and if he'd like to work on more films in the future. When asked if he'd like to direct a film, Kojima replied, "Oh yes, I received many offers after leaving Konami." Kojima went on to explain that he has multiple video game projects in development, and that he may consider making a film once Death Stranding 2 and Physint are complete. Besides Death Stranding 2, and this is a quote now, there is Physint in development. That will take me another 5 or 6 years. Maybe after that, I could finally decide to tackle a film. I grew up with cinema. Directing would be a kind of homage to it. Besides, I'm getting older, and I would prefer to do it while still young. All right, so he wants to make a movie. In the meantime, 5 to 6 years for Physint, which was originally announced in January 2024 during a PlayStation State of Play. I was like struggling to remember exactly what this was, Jan.
Yeah.
But this is like him promising in many ways to like, I'm going to make a Metal Gear again. And it's not going to be called that. It's going to be something new, and I'm going to own it. But basically, I'm making one of those games again. 5 to 6 years, does that sound right to you?
Sure, Grubb. Knowing the scale and all the oddities that Kojima likes to throw into his games, 5 to 6 years, sure.
Yeah.
Let's just round up. Let's go 10.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'll say at least recently, his work at Kojima Productions outside of Konami has been, it hasn't taken the most time to get these games out. They've all come out in about that many years, 4 to 6 years, and that includes Death Stranding 1, and now Death Stranding 2, which is a follow-up. I guess when did the first one come out? Was it like
gosh,
is it 2018? Maybe it's longer than I'm thinking. But either way, I still think that he hasn't. These games are not getting delayed over and over again. 2019. Thank you, Chad. Okay, so yeah, 6 years, right? I believe 5 to 6 years is possible. But also, then I think after that, he's probably not going to be like, okay, I'm going to have time to direct a movie. It probably is right back into yet another game. Although he says he doesn't want to make Death Stranding 3 necessarily. We'll see. What do you want from Kojima?
I the problem is, I think I've spent a lot of my time doubting Kojima. And I think at this point, I'm going to let him cook, but I'm going to let him cook at a distance, because I think the more attention you give Kojima, the more distracted he gets with his other extracurriculars.
Yes.
I do want to see him work on a movie, because, look at his whole repertoire of games, right? He's heavily influenced by cinema, and, really liking something that doesn't automatically mean that these skills translate over, but Kojima does have an eye for editing. He could definitely edit some of his scenes down. But I'd be really interested to see him give it a stab in a more substantial way than he has with, any of his scenes in games.
Yeah, I kind of almost wish that how in the celebrity book or celebrity author space, there's a lot of like co-authorship now, where it's like James Patterson and he'll get like another celebrity in there who's like like Obama is going to help me write a spy thriller that takes place in the White House. I kind of wish movie directing had the same kind of thing, even though like that is like the co-authorship in books is super cynical in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. But in a way that I kind of like, it's like so hey, like I don't know, it feels like wrestling to me in a lot of ways. I kind of wish Kojima could just like partner up with another director, and Kojima can just do the bullshit he wants, and then someone else can make sure it all works together. I would love to see like something like that, like a pro-am situation. Although his quote here of I like to like, what does he say here? Someone in chat just said it in a good way. I think of my movie as an homage to cinema. Sounds like a line from On Cinema at the Cinema from Tim Heidecker. It's like, it really does sound like something you would say if you wanted to sound erudite about film or whatever. Yeah, that's Kojima.
Yeah, I mean, like, he's always tweeting, he's always posting about, sitting down in the cinema, watching the newest thing. But I'm curious, like, I don't know, I want to watch him watch a movie.
Right, I want him to do the thing like Shia LaBeouf did, where he's like watched all his own movies and just had a camera pointed at his face. I want to. Kojima should sell an OnlyFans that's just watch me watch movies.
I'll do it. I'll sign up.
Yeah, you got my money for sure. Excuse me. Death Stranding 2. I'm like more interested in those at this point than I have been at any other point for Death Stranding games, where it's like Death Stranding 1 really came around with the director's cut by all accounts, and now 2 is, it feels like everyone's saying it just gets going, it just gets into the fun. I'm like, I'm kind of in the mood for this weird project that Kojima spends so much time on. I'm not necessarily excited for him to like go back and be like, now I'm going to do my independent Metal Gear. I almost wish that was not something distracting him on the horizon. Obviously, he's got that. There's an OD game that he's working with Xbox on as well, which comes out between these two things, I suppose. But I don't know. I kind of wish that he was like stretching out into places that are completely unfamiliar to him.
Yeah, this ties into an issue that I've had as of late with games, Grubb, where guys, we don't need to announce something. We don't need to announce a project before the work is even started. And I completely recognize that some of these announcements are tied in to draw talent into a studio for sure.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But there's got to be a better way than announcing a game 8 years too early, or like announcing a studio getting opened way too early. And, because then you're definitely dealing with an uphill battle of people not only comparing you to the previous games that you've released, but now like there's an unrealistic expectation of whatever this next project is. And it does harm the studio. It harms the auteur when something goes astray.
Yep, for sure. And I think, like you said, we see all the reasons why something like that does happen. Him trying to, attract talent, or to say the thing that Sony needs him to say in order to make the exclusivity deal, to lubricate those gears so that deal can get done, that sort of thing. But yeah, it still leaves us in a situation where it's like, oh, all right, I don't know. Tell us more about it when you have something interesting to show. And in the meantime, our skepticism might grow.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move along here. A report has explained that, and this is a quote, "The vibes have never been worse at Marathon developer Bungie." This is from Alex Hopley at Game Reactor. A new report has peeled back the curtain on the current situation at Marathon and original Halo developer Bungie, showing the studio is very concerned about the game's launch and morale is at a low point for many working there. This comes from Paul Tassi at Forbes and follows Bungie admitting to the use of stolen art in Marathon. I think we talked about that on Friday. This is apparently the fourth time Bungie has been found guilty of such action in 5 years. Jesus Christ, I didn't realize it was that many times, which doesn't exactly help fan sentiment. According to the Forbes report, the vibe has never been worse at Bungie, with morale in free fall. There apparently have been some changes made to the marketing plan, but there remains a lot of anxiety about the game's upcoming September launch. Everyone has the same concerns about what happens to Bungie as a studio if Marathon bombs. This is a quote now, which is something they absolutely cannot afford, reads the report. It appears there are real fears that Sony might have another Concord on its hands, but we'll have to see if Sony stops or pushes Marathon back to try to prevent that from happening. Currently, Marathon is scheduled to release on the 23rd of September. Jan, going back to my own reporting about the situation over at Bungie and kind of like echoing that they cannot afford for Marathon to miss when a lot of those layoffs happened and they shifted Destiny 2 from having these regular big content drops to more frequent, smaller drops that overall was going to provide less content, but they were going to try to, make it more efficiently and package it in a way that it still felt like you're getting quite a bit, because they want Destiny 2 to continue to succeed and grow. They need that. But what they really need is for Marathon to hit. And in the end, actually, unfortunately, because this sounds very difficult, Jan, what they really need is for both of those things to kind of perform at their top, like most possible performance level, so that Destiny 2 is hitting on all cylinders and is making them a lot of money. And then Marathon comes out and is a huge hit at launch. And it just feels like everyone involved thinks like both those things are off the table, or will be very hard to achieve. And then what is the future of Bungie at that point? Well, I mean, the way it was relayed to me is there isn't much of a future if these things do not take off. So that's, of course, it's got to be like really scary. And I don't know, like Marathon does not seem like some disaster, but like we know that it doesn't have to be a disaster for people to decide, I'm just not going to play this thing, right?
100% Grub. We were just talking about unrealistic expectations, and I think the expectations between Marathon and expectations with Bungie are just so high at this point. And I hate to be a doomsayer and just like watching the car crash happen,
I know.
because I'd love for Marathon to succeed. The
Me
art
too.
has
Yep.
really struck out to me. Unfortunately, some of that art may be plagiarized from other folks, which is a
Yep.
very big disappointment. Shocking to hear that this is the fourth time in like the last couple years. You think at this point someone would be watching from the top and kind of putting the hammer down on that. This just feels like a lose-lose situation, and I really hate for Bungie to be in this spot, especially when the Destiny 2 freaks are like, they're it feels like they get hyped every time there's some type of news, and then I
Yeah.
just get sad
Right.
because
They're
they're
still freaking
mistreatment.
out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's definitely muted. Like I think they're like not ready to like be shouting about Destiny 2 anymore. And it's like, okay, if you're not willing to do that, then how's this thing? Like, is anyone going to feel as excited about it? And probably not. I mean, Jan, I'm trying to like put my finger to the wind with Marathon, and it does feel a lot like Concord right now, doesn't it? Like I mean, who knows if it actually goes the same exact way? But in this moment, it feels like the game like had the test, a public test that people could try the game, and then when that went away, people were just like, I don't even care about talking about it. It's not that I hate it. It's not that I love it.
No, yeah.
I just don't. It's not even worth wasting my time on. It just feels like this vacuum of excitement for it, and that's very similar to I think what happened with Concord. Do you think they can change the narrative between now and September?
I think it's possible to change the narrative between now and release, especially with studios not having to worry about GTA 6 looming in the background for the rest of 2025 at least. I think at this point though, Bungie and Sony are their own biggest obstacles, especially with how Concord was handled.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there are other shooters that are kind of in the similar space, having more positive hype. Arc
Everyone in chat is
Raiders,
bringing up Arc Raiders,
Yeah.
right? And like, yeah.
Arc
I mean,
Raiders,
and then someone made a
is-
joke. It's like, well, we got Arc Raiders over here, and over at Bungie, there's some Art Raiders.
Okay, bravo. 12 podcast points to
Yeah,
you,
good job, chat.
whoever came up with that.
Yeah.
But folks are pointing out something major in that. Is it possible for Bungie's leadership to be solid enough between now and September, especially when like internally the vibes at the studio are kind of butt?
Right. How do you like rescue it while also just trying to fix morale in the first? Like, you kind of need things to be feeling good for people to infuse that energy into the game. And games do come together in the last minute a lot of times. So, but it doesn't seem like it's that. It doesn't seem like this is a game where people are waiting for it to come together in the last minute. People just seem like wholesale unimpressed by the
Yeah.
entire idea of Marathon. And I don't know if that's fixable.
Yeah, that alpha or that test came and went, Grub. I didn't hear a lot of hype or any buzz at all. The only thing I heard from it is that it feels like a weird or more robotic Apex Legends, and that's not a bad comparison to have. With
Sure.
Apex Legends, that's a game that's always felt great. It's definitely lost its audience, but for the type of game that Bungie and Sony are trying to put out, I just don't know if I don't even know if there's an audience there to hook in.
And we're like, Jim, we've had this long conversation about this. And have we mentioned the price? Like, this is going to be a premium price game. It's going to be probably $40. I think what everyone's assuming. Or as we say on the streets, the Concord price. Like, there's just so many hills to climb before you can get to the point where like this is going to be probably still, because they haven't gone back on this yet, a $40 game. And it's, it is an extraction shooter. And I've had fans of that genre tell me that genre tends to work much better if there is an upfront price. You kind of don't want the economy to be thrown off by people spending a lot of money because it's a free-to-play game.
Sure.
Okay, sure. But Arc Raiders is going to be free, it seems like. So comparisons are just bad on every front.
comparisons are bad on every front, and I feel like Sony has really put themselves into the spot with really trying to hammer live service games and canceling several other projects in favor of pursuing this strategy, and it just has not paid off in a substantial way. If anything, I think it's definitely hurt, the image of Sony overall, because now people are drawing upon Concord as an example of a failed launch. People have completely forgotten about Redfall, Grubb.
Yeah.
And now, like in recent memory, it's going to be Concord, and I would hate for it to also be Marathon in the next couple months. Like even Square had like not a runaway hit, but a decent hit with Outriders, and
Yeah.
that was
had
able,
players for sure.
that was able to retain a lot of people. Folks are saying Arc Raiders is planned for $40.
It is okay. All right, there we go. All right then.
But even if I'm presented those two options of Arc Raiders at 40, Marathon at 40, and there's a lot more positive buzz behind Arc Raiders, I think I would
Of course.
my wagon to that horse.
Yep. Yeah. I just think one thing Marathon does seem to have in its favor is it's not going to be locked to the PlayStation. They are going to launch it everywhere, and it's Bungie, and it will have Bungie quality shooting, and that goes a long way. Like the Pepsi test, Pepsi challenge of like when you first start playing this game, is it going to feel good? I bet it passes that pretty well, and that could lend it to some good reviews, and maybe that kind of like one thing leads into another there, and it maybe begins to build momentum coming out of the gate. But in this moment, I believe morale is low at Bungie, because when I just glance over at this game, it hurts my morale as someone who was probably never going to play this thing in the first place. I'm like, God, man, that's a bummer. Games seem like a challenging thing to have to make your business. So yeah, just kind of sympathize with everyone over there in a lot of ways.
It just seems odd to try and pursue such a niche genre of games. Especially when audiences behind battle royales are not necessarily declining, but they're kind of like they've plateaued at
solidified,
this point.
Right? Yeah, they calcified into like there's certain games that they're playing for sure. There's always trend chasing, and the reason is because it's like you think that if we make the more mainstream version of this trend, we could reap a lot of rewards, and I get that. But some trends are battle royale, and some trends are auto chess, where it's like, everyone made an auto chess, but that really very quickly that got like calcified into everyone's just going to play, what is it?
TFT.
Team fight tactics over on Riot stuff, and then everything else is gonna and there was 50 of those things.
Yeah.
So, and that's a genre that's a little bit easier to make something pretty quickly because you don't need a ton of assets or whatever. So when you're going to an extraction shooter, you have to build this whole world, and you need all this art to the point where you're stealing it. It's a whole other challenge.
Yeah,
for sure.
that is also leaving a very poor taste in my mouth, because I really enjoyed how Marathon has been presented every time we've seen it in a major showcase. Now knowing that some, if not a bunch of the art may be plagiarized, it's kind of stinky.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. It's like the one thing I had going for it is now tainted. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, plenty of more news to talk about right after this. Cool. All right, we are back. We have plenty to talk about here on Game Mess Mornings with me, Jeff Grubb. That's Jan Ochoa. Let's get into it with no. The next-gen Xbox does not run on ARM. Here's what you need to know. That is a headline from Jez Corden over at Windows Central. Really, people were thinking that maybe, hey, there's evidence here that the next Xbox actually is switching to an ARM chip from Qualcomm, a Snapdragon. Jez Corden kind of provides some light on this situation to kind of clear things up. The next-gen Xbox console offering is shrouded in mystery, but as we head closer to the inevitable big reveal, details are beginning to leak out. Recently, I exclusively shared that Xbox is working on Project Kinnan in partnership with Asus, which is to serve as a testbed of sorts for its Xbox PC initiative. Microsoft wants the Xbox experience on Windows 11 to be as user-friendly as possible to help support a range of devices that might be more accessible to users who aren't used to or simply don't want the complexity that often comes with PC gaming. To that end, there has been some speculation about what the next-gen Xbox hardware might look like. From his previous reporting, Jess Corden says Xbox next-gen hardware is targeting around 2027, although it's still not clear if that's the launch or the reveal, although it's probably the launch. From what I understand, there will be a true Xbox handheld made by Microsoft, complete with a docking station emulating the Nintendo Switch. That seems like new information as well, where it's like they're maybe going the full Switch route for a device eventually, while Canon is this like first tiptoe into the idea of let's have an interface that makes sense on a PC for people who just want a quote unquote Xbox.
Yeah.
Anyway, yesterday there was a potential new development shared by Therot.com, which with hints from Qualcomm's website. A job listing on the Snapdragon chipmaker on their website seems to suggest the firm is working on next-gen Xbox hardware with Snapdragon solutions. Therot speculated that this could indicate that the next-gen Xbox hardware might have a Snapdragon chipset, which would be a pretty big step for Microsoft's gaming platform. Some of the job description details read as follows: support and selling activities for next generation of service and Xbox products built on Snapdragon solutions. That's the part that really got people wondering, oh, is this going to be in an Xbox? Over at, for Jess Corden, he says, our sources confirmed to me this morning that the next Xbox systems, however, are not based on Qualcomm chips. There might be some third-party designed for Xbox ARMed offerings, like the Logitech G Cloud, but the main plan from Microsoft, at least for now, is for the next-gen Xbox systems to have as much compatibility with the current library as possible. The overheads required to emulate games built for Microsoft's AMD-based systems are beyond what a Snapdragon lineup is currently capable of. And that was like my first reaction here is I could see them going with an ARM-based chip, because that's definitely the way the winds are blowing, but it's not, it wouldn't be a Snapdragon. Snapdragon, while, they're very powerful, sure, they're not there yet. This would have to be something really beefy and really customized, and it just seems unlikely. Microsoft may be designing their own chip in partnership with ARM, the way Apple does. That's something I thought maybe could happen, but it's definitely, if they are prioritizing compatibility, Jan, they are not going to go in the route of ARM yet.
Okay.
It does still seem like something that is on the timeline here, where eventually they are going to go in that direction. But by 2027, that's probably too aggressive to go with an ARM-based solution. And that's probably the right answer, right? If you're still, Xbox, and while everything is an Xbox, the one thing you probably still can't do is make a new Xbox system that doesn't have full compatibility with people's libraries that they've spent years building up, right?
Yeah. A lot of this goes over my head, Grubb. I'm going to be honest.
That's okay. Right now, you need to know is it's going to be an Xbox the way an Xbox Series X is. It has a computer chip in there instead of a phone chip. That's that's the big difference between ARM and x86.
Okie dokie. Microsoft is in a very interesting space, and I think I think the thing that they've been wanting to push is that everything is an Xbox because they want you to play their games. And I don't know. I guess as of right now, Microsoft seems like in a more okay space than PlayStation is, at least. And I don't
for like long term
for long term, right? Because they are acknowledging the extensive library that people have, like you mentioned, and they want people to play those games. Versus sometimes Sony can be a little bit cagey and weird about recognizing every era prior to this one.
You've the benefits here of sticking with x86 right now is that you've turned into a company that makes video games. Maybe you were once a company that made consoles and had an ecosystem, but right now your business really does seem to be a company that makes video games. And so you can't abandon Xbox being what it is for that smaller audience of people that are going to continue to buy Xboxes, which is not going to be massive, it doesn't seem like. But those are your most dedicated players. They're not the ones you test this on. Maybe you do have some other devices. The handhelds, I could see this happening, but they are going to need a concerted effort of backward compatibility and like a translation layer, similar to what happens on Steam Deck, but for x86 games going over to ARM, which is not something that even Steam Deck is doing. It's taking things from Windows to Linux. That's a little bit easier, even though that was a challenge for a while. So prioritizing compatibility makes sense. In the meantime, they're handheld. is probably also, that means it's probably, at least the first one's probably going to have to be x86. Although I wonder if there's a point here where they begin working with third parties and partners to say maybe one of these things could be the ARM-based version that's supposed to have much better battery and doesn't have a fan and it doesn't run every game, but we're going to like work on support over time. They have Windows for ARM already. It's just, you know, the translation there, the getting everything to work has not been great. It's getting better. But yeah, I think this is probably a point where they like just stick to the core chips for their primary consoles and maybe the handheld.
Yeah.
And then in the future, maybe they have a slow transition over to this other hardware. I could see that going that way.
Yeah, if they wanted to experiment and do that handheld, for as much as people are saying that it may be too little too late, this website loves handhelds, Grubb.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think that there's going to be, because the Steam's only sold like, or Steam Deck's only sold like 6 million or in that range, maybe only like 4 or 5 million of the 6 million handhelds that have been sold since the Steam Deck came out. I think that's how it is. That space is just going to keep growing every year.
Yeah.
More and more people are going to come to PC handhelds and really just handhelds in general. And Xbox will probably have something. PlayStation's clearly going to have something as well. Before we move on from this, does that like idea of an Xbox handheld with a dock that works a lot like a Switch sound enticing to you?
I guess so. I'm one of those people though, Grubb, that has never really put their Switch into the dock. I primarily play it handheld. The only time I throw it in the dock is like when we need to capture Switch footage. And that's about it. Otherwise, like I'm just primarily playing that handheld. I do understand the utility though, if for Xbox wanting to kind of take over the whole living room experience, right? Of like, all right, you can take it on, basically promising the same promises of the Switch.
Yep. Yeah. I gotta say, I do not understand people. There's someone in chat here saying they only play docked. Sorry, I just don't understand your life. I can't. I know Vinny Caravella's only ever played the Switch docked. He says, I'm like, what is happening in your world that's possible? But hey, good for you, even if it's not my life. To each their own. All right. Nintendo confirms Switch 2 will include much requested accessibility feature. This is from Jordan Midler at VGC. The Nintendo Switch 2 will support text-to-speech. This feature, which has been shown off in a new gameplay clip of the Nintendo Switch 2's Game Chat feature, shows players typing messages into the system, which are then read by the system itself. The system also has live captioning, so when people are talking, it can put a like block over on the right side of the screen that will say what people are saying in text, so you can sort of read the captions. It's like, okay, Nintendo is forcing us into game chat a little bit. We kind of were asking them to do something along these lines, but at this point, everyone else has Discord support. So it's like, of course, Nintendo's not going to have that. They're going to have their own thing. But at least it seems fully featured in a lot of ways. In some ways, I'm like surprised that it has live captioning, I guess is what I'll say. Jan, what do you think?
I think that is going to wear out that battery really quick.
I think game chat in general is like, it just seems like such a, what's the word? Like in your face, an over the top solution for a handheld. Where it's like, do we really need to make like everything about the video chat and all these other like bells and whistles that are happening with communication? I just need to talk to my team when I'm playing a game.
Yeah, honestly, there are moments where, you know, how some games will have like the Discord overlay and it'll, flash who's talking. Through
something
Discord.
like that.
Sometimes I find that to be too intrusive.
And
now having to see everyone's faces pop up and Grubb, I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna be very self-conscious playing my Switch 2 and playing through game chat because like it is the most unflattering angle that I play.
Right there. Let me put you right in my double chin. Go ahead and take a look at that thing. Yeah, you're right. I don't know. I'm glad to have it because my kids are totally going to use this when they're playing with their cousins. It's way more handy than what we do now, which is a phone in one hand and the Switch in the other. And sure, whatever, that works. But this will be cool for that. I'm guessing that my hope is just that game chat does not like cause any headaches when we're not using it, or when we need it, it is like there is the most minimal version of it that we can engage. And I guess I'm sure that that's possible, although it's Nintendo. So now that I've said the sentence, I'm sure, I'm no longer sure because it's Nintendo.
I know that like us here and like a good chunk of the community are kind of like poo-pooing on game chat. A lot of folks have been of like, we have Discord, blah blah blah. But I do think the utility of kids getting together is going to be something that we're all overlooking, and
Oh yeah.
creating that ease of access of kids being able to like pop open game chat, just press of a button and chat with friends. I think that is something we may be overlooking. I think Fortnite is coming to the Switch too. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, it'll be backward compatible, but I think they're already planning a Switch 2 version very early.
This is going to be huge for the kids. Just firing open Fortnite on the go.
I mean, Minecraft. I think Minecraft is like one of the bigger platforms for Minecraft. I think is the Switch.
Yeah.
And I just subscribe to Realms for my kids, so it's like we're gonna be spending a lot of time in this thing.
And like the gimmicks, they love playing Goat Simulator. Perhaps they want to play Goat Simulator with some friends and just like laugh
they
at
do
the
all the time.
Yeah. So
I mean the whole
go ahead, Greg.
The whole idea, the whole way that kids play games is just like they just want to mess around, and then they want to mess around while their friends get to see them doing stupid stuff in the game, and then they just laugh their heads off. So I think game chat is actually going to be. I think this is the reason Nintendo's making such a big deal about it, because they know that the younger audience is absolutely going to go crazy for it, because it really is going to work, and the fact that it's sort of built in is going to feel pretty special compared to the way like Discord works on the console, where I think you still have to like bring your phone in there to activate some stuff, and it's just a little cumbersome. Here it'll be easy and for families, so it'll get the benefit of that.
Yeah, and I think the reason why some of us may be poo-pooing on it is because the way that Nintendo has presented it and using like a bunch of pretty adults in their 20s and 30s, just like, oh, wow, what'd you do? When in reality, will be a bunch of kids just goofing off and playing around. And I feel like that utility ultimately is going to be better served with younger audiences.
Younger audiences and Paul Rudd. That's the audience.
Oh, of course, the eternal vampire, Paul Rudd.
Nintendo explains why Mario Kart World is the perfect launch title. This is from My Nintendo News. Inverse published an interview with Nintendo's Senior Vice President of Product Development, Nate Bildorf, and asked him why the company opted to launch the system with the surefire hit Mario Kart World. Nate explained that Mario Kart is one of the most broadly accessible games, therefore making it the perfect game to launch a brand new system with. The fact that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe still remains the best-selling Nintendo Switch game of all time by a fair margin probably went some way in influencing the decision too. Jan, sure, I get
okay.
it. That's fine. My question to you is, Mario Kart World for that first month, is that enough? Is it enough to like justify the Switch 2?
I mean, for me personally, no, just because I like playing Mario Kart enough. I just don't think it's going to capture my whole time with the Switch 2, and that's why I chose not to join in on the pre-order
The madness.
Palooza and madness. But for a lot of people, it will be. And I don't want to say copium, but for the folks that picked up the Switch 2 and like they're looking for something to play, if that's their only option, they're going to play the crap out of Mario Kart World Tour.
Yeah, I am excited about World. I am ready. I think I am going to have a very good time with it. But part of that is definitely like I'm like talking myself into it a little bit. I believe what I'm talking myself into, but it is a little bit of like that's what I have there as an option, and I just want to Switch 2, and I want to be excited for it. So I think that's a big part of it for me. But for that general audience, for the normies out there, this is going to be more than enough. And then that first month is going to fly by. Donkey Kong will be here before we even know it. And at that point, for me, it's like, well, now there's no question. Donkey Kong and Mario Kart. This, of course, I'm going to need to have this system. I think most normal people beyond that, it's going to be like, well, maybe when it has like 5 games that I really, really want, that's when I'll jump on board. And I totally get that. And I think it won't take that long for the system to get there.
Yeah.
But Mario, like if you could only have one game to launch the system with, it is Mario Kart, right? There is no other replacement for that.
And especially with how there it seems to be a lot of hidden secrets and different things to do in Mario Kart World that Nintendo's yet to reveal. They've primarily only talked about like racing and costumes and just how like the flow of racing works. They haven't really delved into how open that world may be. And I'm curious to see what people will discover with that. And also, Grubb, I think the thing that Nintendo needs to hammer home as a sticking point is the upgraded versions of some of these Switch 1 games, right? You can, for folks that maybe skipped out on Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom because they were kind of worried about how it performed on the Switch 1, here you go. Here are 2 gigantic games to lose hours in.
I think you're right. Like, I bet that is one of the things Nintendo's looking at, right? Because Breath of the Wild, it's like near 40 million copies sold or something like that. It's 35 to 40 million. And Tears of the Kingdom went to 20 million pretty much instantly, but it has like sold relatively slowly since then. Basically, it's selling at about the same rate as Breath of the Wild is now as well. They're both selling about the same amount per month. So it's just not going to catch up to that. I wonder if like that 15 million to the 15 to 20 million that bought Breath of the Wild that didn't buy Tears of the Kingdom were like either saying to themselves, I'm sure many of them just dropped off and are like, I played Breath of the Wild. I don't need another Zelda game. But I wonder if there's a huge portion of that audience is like, oh, I was kind of thinking I'd get the next Zelda on the Switch 2, which I know is coming pretty soon, so I'm going to wait. I wonder if there's a lot of people who just decided to wait until they had a Switch 2 to play this thing on.
Yeah, I think that is a realistic expectation, Grubb. I think, we saw folks feeling similarly with the Final Fantasy VII remakes, and I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to think the same thing or a similar thing about Tears of the Kingdom. And, maybe if folks were kind of not pleased with how Breath of the Wild ran in certain aspects of the game, and we had rumors about the Switch 2 for years now, so I understand that hesitation to explore Tears of the Kingdom in favor of waiting for whatever an upgrade would be.
Yep. Before we move on from Nintendo stuff, saw someone asking about VRR, variable refresh rate. We talked about that last week. I think since then, Nintendo actually came out and apologized for saying that it would work in dock mode. It works in handheld mode. The handheld screen has VRR, but it seems like there's some issue with the dock and one of the components that it uses that seems to be causing a problem with VRR working in docked mode. Nintendo was asked if it would happen at some point in the future, and they did not provide like any sort of answer to that. They're just like, we can't say anything in this moment. They didn't say no, they didn't say yes. And I wonder if it'll be possible if it is some issue with the hardware. Maybe that's something they put into a revision at some point. I could probably see them doing that. All right. Injustice 3 could be in development, according to a Multiverses data miner. This is from Jordan Midler at VGC. The development of a third game in the Injustice series is being teased by a Multiverses data miner. An account that had a history of posting information about Multiverses content before it was officially revealed has teased that a new game in the Injustice franchise is in development. Multiverses, Injustice, both games from Warner Brothers. Let's see here. Multiverses shutting down is an injustice, then doing it all again is another injustice, reads the post on Twitter from Multiverse Susie. And then they finished up with, leaving me without any leaks is yet again another injustice. And then they replied to that tweet with the number 3. So trying to be pretty overt there. Do you think the implication here is that the Multiverses team, are they still even a team? I'm trying to remember. Did they shut down? Like maybe they might be helping out with Injustice 3 here or something like that, because NetherRealm probably is ready to move on to something else after that last Mortal Kombat game. Seems like they wound that down. And that means to me, the next logical thing is let's bounce back to Injustice after doing 2 Mortal Kombat games in a row. So they are probably working on it. Do you think that there's some Multiverses action happening here where that team is helping out?
Folks are saying that studio may have closed down. So I
think I remember that now. Yeah, I think that sounds right.
I would hope that there are a good chunk of that talent may have been moved over to NetherRealm or in some other support capacity, just so those folks are staying employed.
Maybe that's what happened. Yeah,
it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. I mean, some of the Multiverses team, only that crew knows how LeBron James moves in a video game world.
That's right. In mysterious ways.
Very mysterious ways. The chalk throwing, it's not.
Yeah.
It's a
blessing.
It is a blessing. and I could see that being a fatality of sorts. Um, it's a no brainer for Injustice to be on the way. NetherRealm has kind of been in the Mortal Kombat minds for what seems like forever now. And especially with this big push that DC is making for any and everything DC.
And it sounds like that Superman movie's primed to do very well. So like there could be a lot of momentum, but Injustice 3 is probably years away still. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like if things go accordingly, with how DC wants their DC universe or their movies to perform, an Injustice game would tie into that fantastically. I am very hesitant about DC movies, and that's not just because I am more of a Marvel person. I do love me some Batman. It just feels like,
Of course,
the overall situation at WB is kind of a mess.
yeah, it's more precarious.
I don't
sure.
know what app to watch for HBO anymore, Grubb.
Don't even worry about it. If you just stand still long enough, it'll be back to being just called HBO again, and that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just give it a couple more years. Injustice 3 is something I'm sure was always going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
It seems like it probably is happening right now. When we get it, probably 2 to 3 years off still. Yeah, probably closer to 3 actually.
I mean, NetherRealm has a fantastic engine that they're working with, and like the last Mortal Kombat was great. I would love to see how that gets adapted for Injustice. And whether or not, I mean, this current regime of DC, Grubb, is interesting because it feels like if you went to James Gunn and was like, yo, can Superman do fatalities? And he'll be like, fuck yeah, dog, let's go.
Yes, absolutely. I think you're right. Bringing a little James Gunn just seasoning onto some of these video games, I think could go a long way.
Yeah.
I'm still a big fan of that guy. All right, last headline I have here. Yeah, let's go with this one. Square Enix wanted to shut down Final Fantasy XI last year, but fan interest was too high. This is from Ben Lyons at Game Reactor. Basically, that's an MMO that's been running since 2002. That's crazy. In some regions, that's how long it's been running, though. They're constantly looking at it and assessing it here. But they went on to say that when they did even consider it, they were looking around, and in some ways, there are more people playing now than have been in quite some time. Like it kind of is growing in popularity again. And that's just what happens with some of these MMOs, right? They just entered this period of eternal stasis, and that seems to be where Final Fantasy XI is.
Yeah, a friend of the site, John Carson, I saw him skeeting the other day about getting back at the World of Warcraft. And I'm like, dog, that's crazy, but hell yeah.
Uh-huh. I mean, World of Warcraft, and that one's like, it's crazy, but that's like way more normal than some of these other ones where it's like, people are like, I'm going to go back to I can't remember,
EverQuest.
EverQuest. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to EverQuest. I'm like, all right, yeah, you do you, man. I can't stop you.
No, it just seems like weird for Square to kind of be wanting to get rid of an existing audience that is very loyal to them.
Yep. Well, I think once they like realize that part of it, they're like, you know what? It's completely worth the money we're spending because we're actually still probably making money on this thing.
100%. And I think this is a good problem that a lot of studios wish they had, where a game since 2002 is still passively making them money.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Like I was interested in checking out Final Fantasy XI maybe a year or two ago instead of Final Fantasy 14 just to piss off the internet.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then everyone's like, don't do that. You're crazy. And that makes me want to do it more.
Yeah. And Grubb, like the MMO world, I know it is a very different space than how it was a couple years ago. There's still people playing RuneScape.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. There's still people
playing
Maple
there's
Story.
Like new waves.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's like new waves of people like playing those all the time. They're like trying like, hey, I want to go back to that. And those games are waiting for them and like have sort of made themselves the best possible situation, replace themselves in the best possible situation to bring back people who want to come back. They're like, here's RuneScape Classic. It plays just like you remember. So yeah. Okay. Before we get into the poll question, there was a story I was going to do, kind of just skip it, but let's just do the small details because I'm going to do the poll question based on it. Some $80 games are a steal, according to a former PlayStation executive. Mostly, I just wanted to ask, hey, does anyone paid $80 for a game and felt good about it? I guess, really, has there even been a single $80 game yet? Excuse me, other than Mario Kart. Probably not for most things, but I think, man, losing my voice. I think for the most part, like, I see where he's coming at with this. This is Shuhei Yoshida, who was formerly at PlayStation for a very long time. Where it's like when we like just compare things side by side, $80 for a game, or $100 to take the family to a movie for a couple hours. I get like the reasoning that these executives come up with. I think we're at a point where people are just done with comparisons, and really the only comparison they care about is like you're asking for $80 for a new Far Cry game that feels exactly like, if not worse than, the other Far Cry game that I actually ended up paying $30 for because I got it on sale. And so when people get these games that are sort of run through the mill of like, we're just going to put it in the factory, here's the formula, we're going to make it. $80 makes those games seem even more starkly like, oh, I can notice all the problems and all the things I hate about them. I think it brings that stuff out more. So it's like a dangerous thing that these companies are playing with. Even if a lot of people don't spend the $80 on it, they know the company's asking for $80 and they just get in their head. It's like, this thing is not worth that price. It makes them more susceptible to criticism, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I wouldn't bring up this comparison game because you're just putting the rake right in front of you and stepping on it,
Yeah.
and then jumping on it, where folks are already pinching pennies wherever they can. But then the other part of that is like time, Grubb. Like, I've spent this much time earning $80. Will this $80 like benefit me in the long run if I spend on a game, or buy food? Or perhaps, like you said, like visit the movies where, movies are ultimately a more passive experience where you can just like, and more general experience where you can just chat with friends or whatever, listen to some podcasts. And I think especially with the world where we're kind of in now with content creators and streamers, there are folks that will choose to not play a game or not pay $80 in favor of watching someone else play it instead.
Yeah. And I think what's like a big part of this is just these companies have used every other method to squeeze as much money from us as possible. So we've had years of early part, it was like online passes and $10 like, passes of like stuff you can only get if you buy the game new. So if you buy it used, you got to give us another $10.
Yeah.
So you can unlock all this stuff. And then microtransactions in every game, and those taking the forms of unlocks, card packs that might have stuff in there that you can only get randomly, and that stuff being used to take advantage of us and get as much money out of us as possible. Now battle passes, so we spend as much time in these games as possible, which increases the amount of money people tend to spend. All of these like knobs they turn on our brains to get us to spend as much money on their games as possible. And then on top of that, the games are getting more expensive. So it's just an assault from all sides, to the point where you cannot put the $80 in a vacuum and then just compare it to going to the movies or anything else. It's like, no, we know what you're really doing here. And so I think people are just kind of at their limit with that stuff.
And with how easy it is with, these handheld PCs being more and more of a thing with general audiences, gaming laptops being more of a thing, games being put out everywhere. When I hear $80 for one game, I can't help but do the mental math of like, well, I could spend that time playing Fortnite or Minecraft for free, or I could pick up like 2 to 3 amazing indie games that will occupy the same amount of time that one $80 game would. Because like, I'm thinking of Blueprints at $30 or however it is. I'm like, that is a game you could get lost in for a good chunk of time. And I have.
And I did. Yep.
And I think about something like Skin Deep, which is a completely new experience for someone like me playing an ImSim. And I'm like fascinated by all the moving parts in there versus whatever $80 game, which feels like a AAA blockbuster that it can kind of just be intimidating and exhausting to engage with.
Yeah, you're right. Like all that, like is already working against some of these bigger games. The $80 price just really emphasizes all of those things in a lot of ways.
Yeah, Ash Guy in YouTube chat is like, Expedition 33 for $50 does feel like robbery.
Yeah,
And like
absolutely.
Expedition 33 is still on the top of my list for game of the year so far. And for that to be $50, like that is a steal for what you're getting with that.
Yep. Yeah, I know there's a lot of sensitivity around like talking about what that game means for other games. I get that, but it also feels clearly like something that we just can't ignore. It really does indicate some other stuff happening in video games. All right, poll question. Let's get to that. This is from Friday. Are you interested in playing big third-party ports on Switch 2, like, say, Cyberpunk? 29% of people said yes, they are. 54% of people said no, they aren't. So almost, double the number of people said no versus yes. And then 17% said I'm not interested in the Switch 2 at all. So just discount them. Most people buying a Switch are going to buy it for Nintendo games, right? Yeah. And then I think there is I think 29% of, let's say that's 50%. Or I'm sorry, 33.3% of the people who are saying yes or no, and discounting the people who aren't going to get a Switch 2. That's like a number I think third-party developers can work with.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it's also not something where it's like, oh, expect every EA game to come to the Switch 2. That's probably still not on the table. But I think the ones that hit will hit hard, and we'll find this audience of people who like playing games on their Switch, now the Switch 2.
I think if I wasn't in this field, Grubb, I think the Switch 2 would be like the perfect console to pick up if I've kind of been ignoring this current gen, because those third-party games that are eventually going to get ported over, I can finally check them out. Like I could play a Cyberpunk, I could play any of the Like a Dragon series coming out, the Yakuza series as well. And on top of that, you have all the first-party titles. Heck, if you've been curious about like the Final Fantasy VII Remake games, they're slowly going to come out to the Switch 2.
Yeah, the Final Fantasy VII Intergrade will be on the Switch 2 by the end of the year.
Oh.
So yeah. All right. A new poll question here in a second. Before we get to that, Jan, why don't we tell people what we have happening on Giant Bomb for the rest of the week?
Looks like a pretty standard week. Game Miss mornings from Wednesday to Friday. The Giant Bombcast popping off tomorrow. We'll have a dump truck with a very special guest. Someone's birthday is coming up, so we're gonna go ahead and celebrate that. UPF as well. We got some plans to do some quick looks in the can. Dan is very interested in Skin Deep. I kind of want to do a quick look for Drop Duchy, Ducky, whatever the heck the game is called.
Yeah, both. And we're slowly like picking up pace on stuff that we're working on. We're gonna introduce some fun new stuff here pretty soon, but we are still taking care of a lot of stuff in the background, just getting everything set up and planning for Summer Game Fest. So don't expect too much right away. But I think there was definitely talks of maybe doing a demo derby this week. We'll see if we can make time for that. So look out for something like that. And then in the meantime, I think stuff like Monday mornings missed with Mitch. That's something like once we get back from Summer Game Fest, we'll kick that stuff off in earnest here really, really soon.
Yeah, once the new Pokemon game comes out later this year, or like that specific VGC Pokemon game comes out that they announced in that direct, however long ago that was, I do intend to dust off the Pokemon Monday Night Combat gym.
Ooh. Yeah.
And my favorite part about that show is that I rarely stream that on a Monday.
Yeah, that's the best part. That's what everyone wants. All right, new poll question. Do you think a game can be worth $80? Yes or no? We'll get the results of that. We'll talk about it here on Giant Bomb on Wednesday, because tomorrow, as Jan said, we'll have the Bombcast. All right, let's see here. Anything else we got to clear up or clean up? I think, once again, giantbomb.com/join. If you're having issues with the PayPal thing, just send a support email. I think it's support@giantbomb.com, and we'll get that handled for you. In the meantime, other than that, Jan Ochoa, thank you so much for hanging out with me today and talk about video games, man. I really appreciate it.
It's the best way to start a Monday, Grubb. And also, thank you, everyone, for your kind support at home. We put together a playlist on the Giant Bomb YouTube channel. If you are new to the website or you're coming back for the first time in a while, I suggest you go check that out. Yeah, Voicemail, Dump Truck, and Blight Club are fantastic ways to kind of read the room and get the vibe of the buffoonery and doofussery doofussery that we got going on here. Also, hey, store.giantbomb as well. We have plans to put out a bunch of stuff. If y'all want crop tops, just holler. We'll sell crop tops.
We can make that happen. It's summertime. Let's get crazy out there. We're gonna add more stuff to the store here pretty soon. It's everything is in the works, and I'm very excited about it. All right. So with that in mind, let's go get to work, everybody. Thank you for watching and listening. You're the best audience in gaming. For real, I have the proof now. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.
Yummy like a gummy bear.